What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another Dynasty Fantasy Football video here from the League FFB. Today, we're going to be doing a startup mock draft with Corey Buschlen from Fantasy Stock Exchange. So we got a lot of player takes here on tap today. Lots of stuff to talk about. I don't want to waste too much time, so make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. That way you don't miss any future content. But let's get Corey into the building and let's start talking some Dynasty Fantasy Football. Corey, how we doing, man?
Doing good. I don't want to get us off the rails immediately, but like two major pieces of Toronto sports news dropped like right before we went to record. Masai Ujiri got fired, the Raptors like vice president, and then John Tavares got extended for the Leafs. So I'm all distracted immediately.
Oh, dude, it's all good, man. We've kind of talked last night in our live stream here about the NBA draft and some stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting. I think the thing I'm watching right now is Ace Bailey going to report to Salt Lake City for that Jazz team? Because you heard the story of him not really wanting to play for them, right?
Well, I also saw it with my own team too. Our draft pick immediately was like, damn, like when he got drafted. So it doesn't look like a great situation going on in the NBA right now.
Yeah. Who knows, man? You said you don't want to get too off the rails, but this is what it's for, man. The draft being so close after the NBA finals is insane, by the way. Like, what if football did that? How would that even make it feel? Like if right after the Super Bowl, 3, 4, 5 days later, we're already ripping rookies.
Honestly, it'd be kind of fun because then we wouldn't have to talk about and yap about rookies for 2.5 months before the actual draft from like a dynasty angle. We're just like, all right, we're in. We don't have any time to, overthink like Ted McMillan because he didn't watch football when he was a freshman or whatever.
Yeah, and all of a sudden Ted McMillan is boring and nobody likes him anymore. Yeah, I totally understand. But look, speaking of drafts, let's hop into this draft because we are going to be doing this startup mock draft with the folks here today. For the people at home, if you want to know type of settings, scorings, things like that, this is a 12-team Superflex full PPR. It is a half-point tight end premium, so you get that 1.5 for the tight end, 1 for everybody else. And then also we have 3 starting wide receivers and a third-round reversal. So that's kind of the settings we're going to go with today, but I'm going to hit the start button here. We got a lot of people ready to go. These are all people from the Discord, so if you're not in the Discord, make sure you go join that Discord because that's how we get people in here to draft with us. And right off the rip here, it's QB Mania. Daniels, Allen, Lamar. Daniels coming off the board at the 101 there for 7 GOAT rings. How do you feel about that one, Corey? Are you kind of Daniels 101 because of the age, or are we still not passing up Josh Allen and those guys?
I think that's putting the cart before the horse a little bit. Like as much as I love Daniels and, it's not really the same situation because Stroud didn't run. But like if we did that last year, you'd look pretty stupid just taking Stroud over Allen because he's younger. So I get it, but I'm probably not there. I'm on the board here. Chase would be my highest rated wide receiver, but he's off the board. Neighbor's actually my second highest rated receiver, and he's off the board. I'm going to roll Joey B because he is my highest rated player left available. He feels like a pretty overthought person to me sometimes. In startups, he'll go anywhere from like the early first round to sometimes he'll slide to like the late first. I've even seen him slide to the second round because people get a little, young player mania on Joe Burrow, and he's like 29. So like, I don't want a 29-year-old player.
Yeah. I think the age, especially at the quarterback position, I feel like a lot of times gets overblown. We have guys at the QB position specifically that can play into mid-30s, late 30s even if you're talking about guys like Aaron Rodgers, where like you're still getting years of him playing right now, whether or not he actually even wants to play. You're still getting years where he's doing it. It just feels like at 28, 29, people are already kind of ready to move on from the QB, but they could have another decade of football still left inside this league.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more of a 3 to 4 year window dynasty player for the most part. So, I mean, Joe Burrow at 33 or whatever, he's going to be 32. Like, he's still going to be one of the best QBs in the league. So, honestly, with quarterbacks, I really don't start to factor it in until they're 32, 33 years old, because then you're like in that 3 to 4 year window, you're starting to get a little bit more question marks of it. So I'd say like Dak is like right around that range now where you're like thinking, okay, maybe 3 to 4 years down the road, he's not the same player he once was.
Absolutely. And I ended up going with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I could have kind of looked at the QBs, but it does feel like a lot of these elite guys, and maybe that adds a Mahomes conversation here where, is Mahomes still elite? Is he not elite? Is there a bounce back? But either way, I go Amon-Ra St. Brown. This guy's coming off of multiple top 5 seasons. It just feels like when you're kind of building this 3 wide receiver team, you have the 2 flexes. I like to build the teams around the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, and Amon-Ra is still a top 5 guy in my rankings. So I was happy to get him there at 111.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to feel like you're going wrong when you're able to secure some top end wide receiver talent in a league format that's going to really favor it.
Yeah, and then I ended up going BTJ here with my second pick. I was thinking Bijan Robinson as well, but it does feel like in startups right now, you're getting some pretty good discounts on some pretty solid running backs. I don't know how you feel about guys. I see the name with jersey in the back, but guys like Breece Hall, you can get him way later, and it's like I don't even necessarily feel like Breece Hall is going to be somebody that I end up plugging into my RB1 spot, and then I'm disappointed. Like I still think I can get RB1 numbers out of Breece Hall here this year and maybe a year after. And when it comes to these wide receivers, getting those elite cornerstone guys like BTJ is right now, despite Travis Hunter going there, I still think he's the number one. I'm not going to pass that up.
Yeah, no, I'm not actually a Jets fan for what it's worth. I'm a Buccaneers fan. I happen to be wearing a Jets t-shirt and have a Jets jersey behind me, but I'm just kind of a sicko and I just love football so much that I just like everything except for the New Orleans Saints. So pretty much every team I'll have like memorabilia of on. And so people, I remember I was wearing a Jags sweater one time on a podcast with someone who didn't really know I was not a Jags fan. And they were like asking me about Jags players. And I'm like, I'm not a Jacksonville fan.
Yeah. When you said Bucks, I was like, you know what? He is a Bucks fan. Like I do remember, cause I know the Godwin discourse that you've been pumping on X. Like I definitely know you're a Bucks fan. I just saw the Jets stuff and I don't know. It just came to it, but I kind of had something similar the other night. I did a live stream, on our BBM streams that we've been doing on the channel. I've been wearing different jerseys of players just that I've collected over the last couple of years. It's kind of been a tradition of mine where if I have a dynasty team or a redraft team or any fantasy team that goes to a championship, wins a championship, and I get money from that league because of prize payouts, I buy a couple jerseys of the players that got me there. It's just kind of been fun to get, that collection of guys that have helped me win fantasy championships. And so I had a Gibbs one on last night and everybody was giving me hell because I have all the Vikings stuff and I'm sitting here wearing a Lions jersey.
Yeah, I mean, the only team that I'm impartial to, I would never put, and this guy has won me multiple championships, I would never put like a 41 Saints jersey on or something. Like there's no way I would ever wear a New Orleans Saints jersey in my life. But
see, and I would never
even
wear a
Atlanta
Green Bay
and
Packers
Carolina
jersey.
don't really bother me that much. Like Atlanta and Carolina, I'm like, okay, yeah, they're kind of rivals of mine. Carolina, I would say when I was a kid was a bigger rival than they are now. So not because they haven't really been good at the same time we've been good. When they were good, we sucked. When we were good, they sucked. So Atlanta, maybe this year I'll start to develop some hate for them because we're probably the two front runners of the division. And last year they broke my heart a couple times on primetime. So
yeah, it makes sense. But like I would not wear a Green Bay Packers jersey. I don't have a Packers jersey in my closet. I wouldn't wear the Packers Rodgers jersey. Like for me, that's been like the guy that I've despised my whole life is the Aaron Rodgers Green Bay Packer. But look, you didn't get a chance to talk about Gibbs. I said he was wearing his jersey. You ended up picking him there at the 205. What's the thoughts there, really?
Honestly, like he just feels like such an easy click because I mean, you made reference to it, and I'm actually gonna take another running back here because I feel like the running back position is like kind of like a exponential curve of like the really top end guys are so much more valuable than the other guys. So if you're able to start a draft with a Bijan, with a Gibbs, or with two of them, like I just did with a Gibbs and an Achane, it feels like you can just completely ignore the position until the like 0 RB targets in round 11 or whatever. So you're like, I'm cool with my elite running backs now. I'm going to have to land the plane here at wide receiver because I'm kind of falling behind relative to the rest of like your team. We have two, studs or whatever, but I don't know, whatever the room gives me is I'm okay kind of taking it in that direction. The one thing I just don't do is I'm very staunchly anti tight ends. So I don't usually draft tight ends early. I feel pretty confident in my abilities to pick out a couple breakout candidates later that I don't feel the need to really address the Trey McBrides and the Sam Laportas and even Bowers, like as great as Bowers is. It's just hard for me to click on a tight end and like my team at the end of the draft. I feel like I've fallen behind at other positions. And while tight end premium Bowers is going to be an absolute dominant force, it's hard to land the plane, I find, when you don't have some anchors at quarterback, wide receiver, and then if you get the value on the elite running backs at running back.
Yep, totally. I do agree with that, saying that I did pass on Bijan Robinson, but I think getting a guy like BTJ, it felt like there was a tier break there. I mean, I kind of thought about London as well. It was London and BTJ, but after that, like you were dipping into, the Marvin Harrisons, the Lads, things like that. It just felt a little bit of a tier break, not a big one, but I ended up going Justin Herbert there in the third round when we had that reversal. It came back around, so I get my QB1. I was between him and Drake May. Drake May felt like a player that I would have some more rushing upside with him, but Justin Herbert, it very much is like I know what I'm getting. I still think that there's a pretty solid ceiling there. They added Trey Harris Harris in the offseason, year 2 Lad McConkey, Amarion Hampton this offense as well, like to help kind of with some of the efficiency in the offense and the run game in general. Like it feels like there's still, what we saw from the back half of the season last year in Justin Herbert, there's even more to that, I think, potentially in this year. So I was happy to grab Herbert there as my QB1, and I'm not too upset about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty staunchly anti-Herbert. So
Really?
I think it's good that you made the pro case for him. So why I'm staunchly anti-Herbert is, I mean, he's QB 16 in redraft on Underdog, and I have him ranked lower than that. Like he goes, like Jordan Love goes after him. For personally, I'd rather have Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, Trevor Lawrence go after him. I'd personally rather have those guys. I just I really do think that taking a first round running back signifies that that 504 pass attempt volume that you had last year is probably staying the same or getting lower. So my thought process is, okay, when I'm taking a third 302 kind of asset like Justin Herbert is here, I want him to like really be a difference maker, both value installation and production wise. And obviously Herbert's one of the best QBs in the league, so we don't really worry about him losing value, but the actual production would be my concern with what you get out of Herbert, because I feel like I can get better production out of Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott, some of the like later quarterbacks where I don't need to pay up quite as much in a startup for Justin Herbert there. So I'm on the board. I should probably make a decision. I'm gonna grab a wideout because I feel like I'm screwed if I don't. So I'll grab Devontae Smith and feel pretty comfortable with my top receiver there. If I had longer than 20 seconds, I might have made a more nuanced decision. But I was really hoping that one of those QBs had fallen to me. My QB my QB 9, 10, and 11 are just went off the board with Stroud, with Love, and with Murray. So I feel like I wanted one of those guys. And the only real like disagreement I would have with your selection of Herbert, if you're a pro Herbert guy, that's totally cool. I can't take him over Drake May. There's no way I could do it. Drake May already outproduced him in games that he started and finished last year with me and you at wide receiver and offensive tackle, and a terrible coaching staff as well. What Drake May did last year as a rookie is so impressive to me, to the point that it wouldn't have shocked me at all if all of us were defending Drake May, who liked him pre-draft, saying he had nothing to work with. Like everyone would have failed in that situation, but he didn't fail. He was like really good. And if he was on the Bears last year, I think we'd be having a completely different discussion about Drake May and Caleb Williams right now.
Yeah, I could hear it. And obviously the rushing upside is much different. And especially in like a format like this, where, if you were in a 6-point passing touchdown league, maybe it's a little bit more an argument, because maybe May's not going to throw for 30 or 40 this year. But at the end of the day, like May's going to run a lot as well. I hear the argument. I think for me, it was just, and maybe it's just different play styles. And I got to lock in to make this pick here real quick. But I think I'm going to end up going, damn, man. I guess I'm going to go Xavier Worthy, lock him in there as a wide receiver 3. But for the argument of May, like, I still feel like, man, I lost track. Where was I at there, Corey?
You were talking about May, how he has rushing upside, but the 6-point per passing touchdown probably wouldn't get you to probably taking him over like a Herbert.
Oh, yeah. So maybe it's a difference in play style. I let that pick clock rattle me there for a second. But yeah, if it's a difference in play style, I think potentially where, like, for me, you said you want a difference maker, the 302. I also want a guy that I know can be reliable in my lineup and still have an elite ceiling. So I think for me, it's like, yes, there's still a little bit of risk, I think, potentially with May. I think he's still a fine player. Like, I obviously think he's going to be a great player. He's a guy that I have in my top 10 at quarterback rankings. But overall, I just think May, for me, there's a little bit still more risk. The situation isn't as good still. Diggs off the ACL. Kyle Williams still, I think, very much a question mark until we see what happens there. But I just think Herbert, for me, you have Lad McConkey, guys like Amarion Hampton, who we deem is like one of the better running backs in this class. I just feels like the situation is just a much higher floor. Maybe it's a floor pick there.
Yeah, I think it is a floor pick mainly. Anybody who's pro Herbert is probably like, I don't want to miss on this pick. I want to get a guy that I know is what he's going to be. Again, my argument would be that Drake May outproduced Justin Herbert in his healthy games last year with no offensive tackles, no wide receiver.
Sure.
Like Jalen Polk was running routes out there for Drake May last year. Like Hobble Diggs, Kyle Williams, and Hunter Henry is actually a pretty big improvement over what he was dealing with last year. And I think Vrabel, coaching wise, is going to bring a lot of positive development to a quarterback who frankly needed some good development and a good coaching staff behind him.
Yeah, makes sense. When I came back around at that 411, you went Devontae Smith. At the 410, I was actually really hoping I could click Rome Odunze there and then make the running back pick with the next one, because I didn't feel like there was a huge difference. But Rome Odunze to me was a guy that I really wanted to grab there. Ended up getting sniped, so I go Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor felt like the best player available on the board for me. Was hoping to double tap that with Kyren Williams on the way back around, but didn't get Kyren, so I ended up going Xavier Worthy. I haven't been necessarily high on Worthy this offseason. I have been a little bit below consensus in my rankings, but when I have a team like this, you could still go McLaurin, you could still go DJ Moore, but I can't pass on the age difference between those guys right now, as far as maybe you get a little bit less production this year if McLaurin still has a season like he did last year. But there is an argument for regression with McLaurin, but yeah, I couldn't pass on the age difference there.
Yeah, I mean, I think taking Worthy, knowing that he'll probably produce, I mean, maybe he's more of a wide receiver 2-3 type this year because he's still a young player getting better. Rice is more probably suited in this offense to be a focal point than what Xavier Worthy is at this point in time. But yeah, I would hear arguments for McLaurin over it. I just, frankly, McLaurin's been a wide receiver 3 for most of his career from a fantasy perspective and spiked a 13 touchdown season last year. So yeah, the regression, people are out in full force for Terry McLaurin. I don't frankly blame them. Like, yes, does he have a better outlook now that he has a real quarterback throwing him the football? Yes, but he has kind of been the same player his whole career, and he's 29 and a half years old. It's not like he's going to, magically have like a 20 point per game season next year. Like I'd be shocked if he had much better than what he did last year. But my one thing after I make my pick here is I would have absolutely taken Judkins over Jonathan Taylor and Kyren Williams and not think twice about it.
Would you?
Yeah, easily.
What's the argument, I guess, for, because I think JT is locked and loaded, like top 10 running back this year. I think you could easily say that JT could also be it again next year as well. We talked about kind of playing in shorter 2 to 3 year windows. I have a team right here that has Herbert, Thomas, Amon-Ra, and then Taylor was the pick. It feels like this team could be very competitive right now. Why would you go Judkins over Taylor there?
I guess knowing that you picked Herbert instead of May, it makes the Taylor pick make a little bit more sense. My thought process is like, usually in the first 3 to 5 rounds, I kind of like to stay fluid to the point that by the time this part of the board is on the board, is available, I can see how many people are kind of going more the competitive route. I can see how many people are going more the rebuilder, young player type of route. I love the Colts this year, like as an offense. I think Daniel Jones is going to stabilize the quarterback position. I love me some Josh Downs. I like Pittman's value. I like Tyler Warren is my highest drafted early round-ish tight end in underdog drafts right now. I think Taylor's going to have a good year, but the value accumulation potential of a running back 1 upside prospect in my model, like Quinshon Judkins, whose best comparables were like Dalvin Cook, Rashad Penny, and all these like dudes that were legit difference-making guys as prospects. And then I don't know, man. Maybe you're one of the people on the board that are not super excited about Judkins as the player coming out of Ohio State, but I saw a guy who's consistently, the 3 years he was in college, one of the best running backs in college football, a 220-pound elite athlete who was drafted in the top 40, who goes to a running scheme with a good offensive line that should help reward and accentuate what he does well. There were plenty of people out there that did not like Judkins, the prospect, as much as I did, though, which is kind of why I differ from consensus on Judkins, the player, being over Kyren and JT and some of the veteran running backs, is because I just think the guy's going to hit in the NFL. And you get a 22-year-old hit who was a top 40 pick. He's going to be a top 5 dynasty running back midway through his rookie season.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. And I'm not one of the people that was fading Judkins. I thought Judkins was as good as they come, really, as far as running back prospects go. For me, when I had them ranked in my rankings pre-NFL draft, really is just prospects before we had landing spots, before we had anything else. I ended up having my rankings as Genty. I had Henderson over Hampton personally, and then I had Judkins behind
them. So
okay, so yeah, I mean, I was right there with everybody for the most part, but yeah, I just think for me, like, I'm slightly worried about some efficiencies. I'm slightly worried about that team there with the Cleveland Browns. Like, it's really hard for me to look at that situation and not think that they might be picking 101 next year. Like, they could potentially be the worst team in football. And I also am just a little bit worried that they ended up going and getting a guy like Dylan Sampson, who can kind of spell him, which doesn't necessarily mean, I don't think that Judkins is going to be bad. I just don't know if he's going to get the full workload that we've seen guys like Nick Chubb get there before Kareem Hunt got there. But that's kind of what I think they're going to do, is the Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt spelling.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely a fair criticism of Judkins' workload. I thought he had a lot of meat left on the bone to get better as a receiver, and top 40 draft capital. He profiles very similarly in my model to the guy he's replacing. with Chubb. So
Fair.
even if he only gets the capped Chubb ceiling of, okay, I'm a mid RB1 at my best case scenario, I still think you get that type of season. Like what Chubb did as a rookie, he started the season, didn't get the full workload. Back end of his rookie season, he took over Carlos Hyde, I think was the incumbent starter there. And then he had like a monster workload at the end of the year, and he was immediately like a top 5 dynasty running back. I just think the back end RB1, mid RB1 type of projection is what I'm looking at for Judkins pretty early on in his career, because the volume is there. And I think the Browns, I don't think they're going to win a lot of games, but I think they can be a functional top 25 offense in the NFL with a good run game, a decent number 1 receiver, a good tight end. Whoever plays quarterback for them might be a problem. But I mean, it is dynasty. Like they could have a very high pick next year and draft it. They have 2 first-round picks next year as well to be able to go get a top-end quarterback. So even if Judkins doesn't reach his full potential this year, that would mean they have a very highly drafted quarterback next year, which would help him reach that potential.
Fair enough. You ended up going with, we kind of haven't had a chance to talk about T-Law, Olave, or Kittle. You grabbed all 3 of those guys. You kind of want to talk me, through some of those picks?
Yeah, I really hate that I had to. I mean, Lawrence is fine, but I wanted, like I said, I wanted Kyler, Love, or Stroud with the pick that I took Smith, or I wanted Mayfield or Purdy to fall to me on the way back, and neither of them did. So I end up settling on Lawrence. He's kind of a coin flip as far as what I think he'll turn into, because you could make a realistic case that he is an average NFL quarterback at this point in his career, because he hasn't really been a difference maker since that like playoff game of his second season. But I saw what Liam Cohen did as a Buccaneers fan for Baker Mayfield last year, and I do think he'll at least accentuate the pros that Trevor Lawrence does have, which is that he's big, he's good on the move, he's a great arm, he can be accurate. He's got to stay healthy, and he's got to just throw the ball to 7 and 12 every single play. Honestly, like just find Hunter and BTJ on every single throw, and you will be fine. The less you're throwing to Brenton Strange and De'Ami Brown, the better.
100%. I agree. And I'm actually one of the people I think right now that is a little bit more bullish on the Trevor Lawrence pick. I feel you when you're making the selection and you're like not feeling good about making the selection of Trevor Lawrence, but I see the argument, and I do think if I had to pick a side today, I'm going to bet on the Liam Cohen improvement. So I'm with you where I see the bull argument there for him. Olave is kind of a player that's been very risky as well. A lot of people kind of talking about the concussions and how, it's almost more likely than not that Olave doesn't necessarily return back to value. What are you kind of looking at Olave at here? And, on this team, he's going to be needed to be your wide receiver too. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm in rare air right now. I don't usually have this weak of a wide receiver core at this point in the draft, but I'm just hoping I can make it up in numbers, given that I'm so set at running back, quarterback, and tight end. Olave to me is worth the risk. The reason for that is because this was a guy a calendar year ago who we were drafting in the mid-second round of redraft leagues, who was a 25 and 27% target share guy through his first 2 seasons at 24 years old. People are injury prone until they're not. And I get that concussions are risky and they can, really be finicky and that kind of thing. But I don't want to be the guy that says the guy just quit on his team, but it seemed like he maybe milked the concussion being a little more severe than it was, because he's out on Twitter talking about catching hospital balls from his quarterbacks and stuff. My thought on Olave is, okay, similar to the Judkins thing, like, yeah, maybe the Saints are a complete and utter tire fire this year, but Olave is a free agent after this year. He's been in trade discussions for a couple of months now. Potentially the Steelers inquired about him, potentially the Jets may be inquiring about him. Like, it wouldn't shock me if his situation's vastly different, whether it's a first round quarterback coming into the New Orleans offense or it's him being on an entirely different team altogether. I see a 24-year-old highly talented, very good target earning wide receiver, and I draft him.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm also kind of on the side of things where I'm buying Olave right now. I think very cautiously buying Olave, but I'm buying Olave right now. Yeah, I think he's a player that I still see I'm with you. He's a high target earner. He's going to be the number 1 guy in that offense, whether people like it or not. And when he's on the football field, I still think he can be a difference maker. I'm sitting here on the clock and I haven't even made a selection. I guess I had a idea what I was going to do, but I'm going to take David Montgomery. I'm kind of leaning into this Lions thing with Amon-Ra on Monty. Monty also feels like a safe running back too. But yeah, I'm there for Olave. I hear the the argument for him. Gonna go through a couple of my picks that I made here because there's been a couple we haven't really touched on. I ended up going with the Prescott and Pickens Dallas stack at that turn there. I just think Prescott is a guy that's always undervalued. It feels like when he's on the football field, he is productive for us, like always flirting with those low-end QB1, high-end QB2 type of numbers most weeks. You have the improvement of Pickens being there, so no longer wide receiver 2 is going to be a guy like Brandon Cooks or a guy like Jalen Tolbert, and hopefully a little bit more touchdown opportunities there in the air for some passing touchdowns rather than being on the ground, especially with guys like Javonte and Jaden Blue and these guys kind of being the guys in the backfield. So I'm definitely buying Prescott. The perfect situation for me would have been Goff falling, and then I could have had the Goff and Amon-Ra stack there, and that probably would have been best situation. But then Pickens, also a guy that I think the efficiencies at worst are going to be the things that improve here. You could have more targets potentially. You could have more touchdown opportunities, all of that good stuff. When it came back around for QBs, I was kind of scared of getting left out in the dark. You have 2 QBs, and it was like, if you don't grab one more of these guys, you might not have a guy sitting here as QB3 to play on bye weeks or potentially be injury insurance. So I go Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart's a guy that I think has a lot of upside. I like him here with Brian Daboll being paired with Malik Neighbors. When you get a rookie quarterback, you want them to be paired with a elite wide receiver. That's why I like guys like JJ McCarthy. That's why we've liked guys in the past who get into these really good situations. And I think that's the same thing here for Dart with Neighbors. And he also has the rushing upside as well. He's a guy that used his legs a lot in college. I just think he has the talent. Is he going to put it together at the NFL level? I'm not sure. I think he might. But I'm definitely, I think, more bullish than consensus is on Dart at the moment.
Yeah, I was a big Dart guy going into last year. I actually had him ranked QB1. From like a Devy perspective, looking into his prospect profile, I was like, hey, this guy could actually, I know he's in like kind of a Mickey Mouse scheme in college, but
yeah,
he has good numbers. He's efficient. He doesn't turn the football over. He's big. He has a good arm. He can run. Like, he has kind of the framework you'd want for a young quarterback for a team to build around. It's funny you mentioned like, these guys with young alpha wide receivers and whatnot. I have a thing in my prospect model in my quarterback one that I'm building right now. There's no way, like, and I don't know if you feel this way about evaluating quarterbacks like post NFL draft from like a dynasty perspective. There is really no way to evaluate the landing spot objectively, but we all know it matters like so much. So I'm trying to find inputs in the prospect model to account for it. And some of the things I've come up with are like, do they have any former all-pro wide receivers or tight ends or running backs that they're working with? Do they have any, like, how many 1,000-yard players are on their offense? How many wins did their team have in the previous 3 seasons on average? So when you think about like the Giants, obviously they haven't been a very good team, but they do have like a certified stud receiver to throw to, and that's going to matter a lot for Dart as he develops.
Yeah, I agree. And I it is kind of a curious case because it is true. Like, we can look at these quarterbacks and evaluate these quarterbacks all day long. I used to, when I first kind of started getting into evaluation and stuff like that, actually trying to give advice on the internet, was like, I used to watch these quarterbacks like crazy. And then it's like, well, the NFL draft happens and everything changes. Like, you could completely have guys that you like traits, but we know that the situation, probably more than any position in football, is the position where the landing spot's going to change the way you think about these guys for the most part. So I think it's interesting to think about, like, what are those variables that you could try and find to pinpoint and analyze and actually put it into a model. I'd be interested to see how you do that when it's all said and done, but it's tough, man. I think it's really hard to, I mean, this is why the NFL teams miss on it so much, right?
Yeah, there's no one on planet Earth that's going to have a very good hit rate on the quarterback position. Like, draft capital is the highest, like R squared to, fantasy football success. And even draft capital is like less than a 50% hit rate on quarterbacks, because, and there's also an example for everyone. Like, you can be like, okay, this is what matters for quarterbacks. Good landing spot. Let's say they land with former all pros. They land with a bunch of great receiving talent. They have a good coaching staff, all this kind of stuff. Okay. You'd be like, that's what Patrick Mahomes had. That's what it is.
Yeah.
We need a situation like Patrick. Okay. Well, that would have led you to draft a shit ton of Trey Lance also.
Yes.
So like, there's no right answer that's going to work 100% of the time. You got to be like, okay, Trey Lance also was a 1-year starter at a small school, so maybe we shouldn't have been elevating him from that perspective. But yeah, like, it's really difficult difficult to just say it's a one size fits all and this is what results in a hit at the quarterback position.
Agreed. And again, like even last year, right? Like everybody was talking about Caleb Williams. I had Caleb Williams as my number one quarterback in the class. Like at the end of the day, he was going into a situation that everybody deemed much, much better than Jaden Daniels, but then Jaden Daniels performed. So it's like, you could even look at like, okay, is it like receiving weapons? What are those things? But even then it didn't matter because Jaden Daniels outperforms.
Yeah, no, there is no way you can measure it all in totality, because for some cases, the coaching was the thing that went wrong, which is the case with Caleb Williams. For some cases, it's the weapons that went wrong. So it's like Caleb had the weapons, but he didn't have the coaching. And you could argue that Daniels had the coaching, but he didn't really have the weapons, at least on paper when we were looking at the season. So it's hard, man. It's not easy to evaluate quarterbacks. And like, who's to say both of these guys don't end up being studs? But it also wouldn't shock me if Jaden's the stud and Caleb is not a stud, and he ends up kind of having like a Trevor Lawrence career trajectory.
Yeah, it could happen. It's definitely not out of the range of outcomes. When you make these selections here of Sutton and Ridley, you're leaning now into, you're scooping up veteran value. These guys might not be around for a long time, but you're going to get some points out of them, I think, this year and maybe next. What is kind of the mindset now? Because it does feel like you said, stay fluid, but now that you've drafted Kittle, Sutton, Ridley, it feels very much like you're trying to go get this thing early.
Yeah, no, I don't really have a choice at this point. Once I hit the button on Kittle, I'm like, George Kittle, first of all, like I have him ranked over Trey McBride in redraft. So I'm very pro Kittle. The argument that's going on about, do we take Pearsall? Do we take Jennings? What about Ayuk when he comes back? Just take George Kittle.
Yes.
Just draft George Kittle. That's the answer.
I agree. Even in these like best ball tournaments and things like that I've been doing over on Underdog, like when you can take Bowers and McBride and you have to use that second round pick on them in those best ball tournaments, or you can wait till that fourth round, maybe sometimes the fifth round, depending on the lobby you're in, and grab Kittle. Why are we not loading up on the running backs and wide receivers and then getting the elite tight end there? I'm also typically in those tournaments, I will say, like, if I'm going to reach the elite tight end, it is a guy like Kittle. It's not one of those top guys, but most of the time I'm just punting. Just kind of like, I mean, you see, I haven't even drafted a single tight end yet. Neither of you. Or I guess you have Kittle. We just mentioned that, but yeah, I haven't drafted a single tight end yet.
And I wouldn't. And if it wasn't Kittle falling, I wouldn't have a tight end either. But George Kittle has gotten 100 targets twice in his career, and he's been a top 4 tight end every year except for one since 2018.
Yeah.
Like
and not to mention, this is a premium.
Yeah, the guy has 1, 2, 3, 4 years of at least 70 receptions. At least he's been 14.1 points per game, tight end 4, 15.8, tight end 1, which he outscored McBride and Bowers last year, and now goes after those guys. 15.9 in 2019. He had 107 targets, 85 receptions that year, and then 16.0 fantasy points per game in 2018. Oh, and by the way, in none of these seasons did he score more than 8 receiving touchdowns. So if he spiked a 12 touchdown season, he would be insanely broken from a fantasy perspective. Again, the way to play the Pearsall, Jennings, Ayuk conundrum to me is through George Kittle. It is the most logical thing. I have George Kittle as like an early 3rd round redraft pick, and he goes in the 5th round on Underdog. It is the most insane value on the entire board.
It's crazy. And I am totally agreeing in the aspect of like, when you're trying to debate them for 2025, the Niners, the answer is George Kittle, because I recently just was, I wrote a blurb for a Fantasy Pros article the other day about players that I need to be avoiding, players you should be avoiding here in the next couple of days, or I guess this year. And then the player that I'm avoiding is Brandon Ayuk. Like Brandon Ayuk's a player that I don't even expect us to really be comfortable throwing him into a lineup until late October, maybe early November. And even then, like, unless you have an IR spot in your dynasty fantasy, I mean, in your redraft fantasy football league, what's the point of drafting him? Because you're wasting a roster spot for most of the year.
Yeah, he is so format dependent. For me, because I actually really like him in Best Ball Mania, because in Best Ball Mania, you advance Brandon Ayuk, and by week 10, let's say, is when he's fully back to full health, playing the full allotment of snaps. Well, all the money's in week 17. And Brandon Ayuk, the last time we saw him healthy on the football field, Matt Harmon called him one of the best receivers in the league in his reception perception profile in 2023. Yeah. He was a second-team All-Pro. He had 1,300 receiving yards in the same season in which Debo was a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy, Kittle was a top 6 tight end, and Christian McCaffrey had a legendary season. So it's pretty hard to be that good on a team with with that many other great players who demand the football the way that Kittle, McCaffrey, and Debo in their prime demand it. So depending on the format, I like Ayuk. Managed redraft league with my buddies? No. Best Ball Mania? Yes. Dynasty, if I'm 1 year punting and he comes at a good value, like he got sniped from me in this draft at the Sutton pick that I made, I would have taken him if he had fallen to me there, because in like a 1 year punt scenario or a scenario in which you can make up that production like I was intending to do, where I drafted Ridley and I was going to draft like Mooney types later, I don't have to use Ayuk right away, but I feel confident that by week 10, week 11, week 12, he'll start to rebound in terms of value. And this was a dude who was a top 12 to 15 wide receiver in Dynasty 1 year ago.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've been a big Ayuk guy as well. I made a video last year where it was like looking at my player exposures across my Dynasty leagues and like what players have the ability to make and break my Dynasty teams this year. And Brandon Ayuk was my most rostered player by far. You can guess how that went when I said it made or break make or breaks my season. A lot of my teams, I had to play a lot of catch up most of the year with Ayuk. And I like the Mooney pick for you, dude. Like, because for me, I was debating between Mooney and Kyle Williams there at the 11:02, and you ended up getting him about a round later. So that's something that I like. Let's take a chance. I think I can click on this and we can kind of just like focus on your squad here for a second. Walk me through it, man, because typically in these Dynasty startups, you're doing the slow drafts. We're not really doing them super fast like we are right now. This is a 30-second clock. We're trying to talk through picks, make selections, work a streaming software, all of this stuff. So, it can get a little crazy, but walk me through it now that you have a chance to kind of look at what you've done and tell me, what do you like? What do you dislike? What would you do different? Just kind of walk me through this.
Yeah, like you said, in a regular startup, I'm in one right now actually, and it's a Devi. We got to do the Devi startup after the Dynasty startup, and I haven't picked at my own pick in like 6 rounds, so we're maneuvering the board most of the time, and that's what I would have been doing in this one. I feel good about where I got everybody. I fell behind at wide receiver, so I really did have to make it up in numbers. My third quarterback back pocket didn't turn out as well because Danny Dimes is like, I'm championing him apparently this year. He's just my guy because I just think he's going to win the job and be this year's Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, what we've seen the last couple of years where he has a great year and he starts producing and the Colts will probably roll with him going forward. Like I legitimately think that's what's going to happen with Daniel Jones.
I can totally see it. I can totally see it.
Because Anthony Richardson like sucks ass, like is a horrible quarterback. He is the worst passing quarterback I've seen in a while.
I agree. It's a shame. I was a Trey Lance guy, by the way. I'm fully out of myself right here. I was a Trey Lance guy. I liked him. But it's a shame that Anthony Richardson has almost gotten twice the leash or 3 times the leash that Trey Lance got. I guess that's what happens when Brock Purdy's sitting behind you, but it's just a shame because I agree with the Anthony Richardson thing is like, I don't know how they keep throwing him out there. I would not be playing him if I'm the Colts.
Well, he can't even freaking stay healthy long enough to get through a training camp on top of everything that he does when he's actually on the field. So yeah, I mean, I was the year after Trey Lance, people were still buying him. Oh, you got to buy him. He's, I was like, no way, dude. I'm throwing threes at Brock Purdy all day. He's going to win this job. Like thankfully I was on the right side of that take. I was obviously very pro Justin Fields the year before that, and that didn't really work out. But anyways, the rest of my team, Gibbs and Achane, I felt like those are 2 top 9 players for me in redraft this year. I have Achane ranked at 9th overall in redraft this year. Like he is an absolute hammer of a running back for me. So I feel good that those guys are going to carry my weeks. Would I have liked to get a third quarterback? Yes. Or a better second quarterback? Yes. But you know what? I'll cross that bridge when I get there. If this were a real startup, I might be throwing out offers for third QBs. After the 12 rounds that we've drafted, maybe I'm drafting more backfill guys that I can maybe get weeks out of. Like we saw Russ and Rodgers and whatnot. Russ actually goes, but Rodgers still on the board. Maybe I would draft somebody like that for a third quarterback. The only real problem I have here is that I don't have any hammer wide receivers. And I don't really see a whole lot of outs to a hammer wide receiver here. My best chance of having a guy that's going to be a dominant 17, 18, 19 point per game guy is a healthy Chris Olave with a young quarterback in the draft next year. Probably, I would say, is my best out to that. But I'm going to patchwork my wide receiver core in this hypothetical fantasy league and let Kittle carry me because he's going to be dominant. Let my running backs and Burrow and hopefully Lawrence carry me in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And like we said, it's a start 10, so you get the 3 wide receivers, the 2 flexes. Like Jones is going to be a weekly starter for you, and you drafted him late. Like you can find the other 2 guys. I think Smith and Olave, those are going to be the guys that you're playing pretty consistently. And Sutton's also going to find his way into the lineup hypothetically in this league all the time. So I don't dislike it. When I'm looking at my team, the more and more I'm sitting here, I'm listening to you, Corey, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should have selected May over Herbert. Maybe I should have, especially now that I see that I got Kyle Williams back here on the back end. I'm like, I kind of like to chase the stack a little bit, and I could have got that down here. But looking at this team, I still love what I have for the most part. Having guys like Amon-Ra, BTJ, Worthy, Pickens, like I feel like I have so much upside in that wide receiver room where I can have guys like Pickens and Worthy who can spike and give me wide receiver 1 weeks, and then I have bona fide wide receiver ones in Amon-Ra and BTJ. As far as my quarterbacks go, safe floor for both of these guys. I think both of them are in good offenses and are going to be very fine fantasy football assets in Herbert and Prescott, and I like the upside with Dart there as a rushing quarterback potentially, especially in this type of deal where Dak is, 31. He's 31 this offseason, right? He's going to be 31 this year?
Yes, I believe he's 31 currently.
Yeah, so, I said people panicking at 28, 29, 31, I'm maybe looking at lining some things up. Dart could potentially... Actually. You said what?
32 next month.
Oh, 32. So, yeah, I mean, even better for, lining Dart up behind him to potentially be the guy if he has some rushing upside. And then the running backs, this is kind of where like I did have to get cheap at two positions, and it really was the tight end and the running backs because I was going so wide receiver heavy to start and QB heavy. And so I ended up going with Taylor, Monty, and ETN is kind of what I'm patchworking there as the RB2. Obviously Monty, good offense, gonna still have some touchdown opportunities. I think people are fading Monty for whatever reason right now, and I don't necessarily know why. Maybe you can give me the argument for the Monty fade here in a second. But I'm also team pro ETN bounce back. I think ETN is definitely undervalued right now, and I think he's going to have a bounce back. So I'm willing to take the shot there. And likely, I'm not a big likely guy, but we're getting the Mark Andrews trade rumblings all the time. He has 1 year left on the contract. They have talked about him potentially being an all-pro. Hey, if I'm going to take the breakout shot on a tight end, I'll take Isaiah Likely right here in a good offense with Lamar Jackson and just see what happens.
Keep trade cuts tight end 8, apparently, Isaiah Likely, which
ridiculous.
Seems pretty crazy to me considering he was like, tight end 17, probably off the board at this draft.
Yeah, what did he come off the board here? It's got to be like tight end
at least 15, I would imagine, based just on the amount of yellow I see here. It definitely was not 8.
Yeah, so if we have some suckers that draft in our league and then go look at keep trade cut, I'm going to be able to move him for a guy that got drafted 3 rounds higher.
Yeah. My anti-Montgomery take is just that I can't take Montgomery in a startup because he's 28 and a half years old and has exactly the same projection as DeAndre Swift, Brian Robinson, Isaiah Pacheco, who are 2.5 years younger than him. And I could even make the argument that all of those guys have better projections because David Montgomery's only real ceiling comes from Gibbs getting hurt. Yeah, I get he's been a touchdown, like he'll score touchdowns and the Lions are an excellent offense and stuff, but they also lost Ben Johnson and their center Frank Ragnow, which to me directly impacts David Montgomery more than anybody on that entire offense because he's the in-between the tackles runner and Ben Johnson schemes up a rushing offense like nobody's business. So for me, I'm like, I'll take the 26-year-old running back like Brian Robinson, who's also a touchdown or bust running back just like David Montgomery, except he's only entering his 4th season and is not 28 years old and has a longer leash. And like, it's not like Robinson's in a bad offense. It's not like Pacheco's in a bad offense. It's not like DeAndre Swift is in a bad offense. Like they can all kind of carve out the same role as what David Montgomery does and maybe even a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that argument I hear. I agree with actually most of the names that you said. Pacheco, I definitely would have taken him over Montgomery. Right. However, he went earlier. So did Swift. He went before I took the Montgomery pick as well.
The one that I would have been like taking for sure.
Yeah, but Pacheco was the guy that I had queued up. I was trying to get him queued up as we're talking. That way I just didn't get caught with an auto pick. But I had Pacheco queued up. He's a guy that I also believe is a very likely to be a bounce back candidate this year. And he's a player that I have more exposure to in best ball tournaments. I have more exposure to in dynasty leagues. I have more exposure everywhere across all platforms where he's my number one guy right now this offseason. I just haven't been more in on anybody than Isaiah Pacheco. And a lot of people are in on the Brashard Smith side of the things. Fine, 7th round guy. I know Pacheco is a 7th round guy as well. They're going to have a mix of guys. I think last year we noticed that kind of they did like running those 2 running backs. They did bring Kareem Hunt back, Elijah Mitchell there. It doesn't matter. Nobody in that offense right now runs as hard, runs as well as Isaiah Pacheco when he's healthy. And I'll tell you this, I don't think I'm going to be surprised when 6 months from now, maybe even less than that, we get the Adam Schefter report that Isaiah Pacheco signs a 3-year extension with the Kansas City Chiefs.
I'm right there with you. Isaiah Pacheco was my highest rostered non-Saquon Barkley top 5 round running back last offseason. And obviously that didn't work out great because he got hurt and he was out for the entire year pretty much. But before he got hurt, you saw it in those first couple games. Like Yeah, every touch we'll give him. We will give him every single touch. And they're talking about it. He looks healthy. He looks great at this point. Like, he was not himself when he came back. Like, I kind of am glad he came back so that people saw that version of him. Because if he had just been out for the year and coming back fresh, nobody saw the bad play of him, he probably goes a lot higher in both best ball and in dynasty drafts. And I'm 100% on the same page as you. Dude's a 7th round pick, man. He was a 7th round pick. He does not make a lot of money. Every extra yard, every touchdown, everything he can fight for to get an extension, he is going to be doing. He makes like $900,000 a year.
Yeah, 100%. And I've been grabbing him in all of my dynasty leagues for 2nd round picks. Rookie drafts came around. Hey, I don't want to make this 208. I don't want to make that selection. Let me get Isaiah Pacheco.
208 this year.
Yeah, right. But like, I don't want to make it. Somebody in my league's a little bit excited. Why don't you just throw me Isaiah Pacheco? Sure, I don't like Pacheco because he had him last year, right? So he gets rid of him. I've been doing that everywhere. I was going to do that. I told you, the players that can make or break my teams. I was going to do that again here in like about a month. Isaiah Pacheco is my number 1 guy. So Isaiah Pacheco is going to make or break my teams here this year.
Yeah, no, I got exposure too. I just drafted him in the Devi startup that I'm at, and I got him. Where did he go in this draft?
8-9.
I got him at the 9-9 in my draft, and I felt pretty good. With a competitive team building out and getting Isaiah Pacheco at the 9-9 as my RB2 to go along with an absolutely dominant wide receiver core, quarterback core. Like, I felt pretty good about that. I was like, yeah, this is a pretty good value that I got.
I love it, man. All right, there's 2 players sitting on this board that I kind of just want us to talk about just because I think they're interesting conversations. One of the guys is going to be Tua Tagovailoa. Tua, obviously, we've had the concussion injuries and things like that where people are very, very nervous about Tua, and for a good reason, but it feels like where he's being drafted in startups right now, it's going to be really hard for people not to get value back on Tua. Are you, at a point right now where you're saying like Tua is a guy that you are buying this low in startups, or are you one of the people that's avoiding him all out?
I selected him at the 706 in our startup. So if that answers your question, that's where I'm at with him. I'm on the same page, man. So Tua's discourse really annoys me on Twitter because everybody knows he's not an elite quarterback, but the people that think he's an elite quarterback really do think he's an elite quarterback. But then the people that hate Tua think he's like Anthony Richardson level bad.
Yes. Yeah, it's bad because I'm looking at the board and I feel like if I were to look at this objectively, like say the end of the year, we get the points, whatever. Obviously the big hypothetical is Tua stays healthy, right? But at the end of the year, like why would Tua not be in that range right there with Dak and Bryce Young? Like he should be there almost 2 rounds higher. You could even argue, I think, that maybe Tua healthy is above Cam Ward, and he's more of a 5th round guy.
Michael Penix's ceiling is Tua Tagovailoa. Like, I don't know if anybody realizes that. Like, that's what his best case scenario looks like. And Brock Purdy and Tua are the same quarterback. They operate the same offense, and they're just basically playing like drop back, get it to the playmakers, and get out of the way. That's what their job is, and they do the same thing. But if Purdy has a great season and Tua has a bad season or an injury-riddled season in this case, Purdy's going to go 4 rounds higher in a startup, even though they're exactly the same projection pretty much every single year.
Yeah, I am so in on the value that you can get Tua at right now. And it's funny because it just feels like the people that have him still though in my leagues, they're like, I'm just going to ride this until it burns. Like I'm not getting rid of this at any point now. Like I just got to die with this.
That's the right take in my opinion. If you have Tua, you can't sell him, but
you just die with it.
Like, because you're not going to get what you should get for him.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then the other player that I kind of want to talk about is Tucker Kraft, because Tucker Kraft's a kind of like a dynasty darling, I think, at the moment. I think there is a bullish and I think a bearish argument for him. But he goes here at the 10-5. He's a player that I had loaded up in that queue. I would have taken Kraft over ETN and Kyle Williams had he got to me there at the 211. But how do you feel about him? And I guess that bunch of guys there, kind of with Kincaid and Njoku, Andrews, Kraft, all of those guys all together. Like, is Kraft the number 1 guy or is he not?
So I'm going to take myself down a peg before I put myself up a peg just to make sure I'm balanced here. So in this draft class, this 2023 draft class, I screamed from the mountaintops that I would rather have Tucker Kraft than Luke Musgrave. Before the draft, after the draft, I was like, I will never, I don't have a single share of Luke Musgrave. Tucker Kraft is my single highest rostered player across my dynasty portfolio. Not even close. I drafted him in every single 3rd and 4th round of that year's rookie class that I could. I also had Tank Bigsby ranked over Devon Achane before the draft. So that's me taking myself down a peg for sure. I thought Tank Bigsby was the better running back. He absolutely was not. So for me, I'm in on Kraft at his price. I actually am not because I already have him in so many leagues. So I don't actually draft him usually now because I'm like, I got my bags packed already. But if I was in one dynasty league with all my buddies and I was the only dynasty league I played in or whatever, I would absolutely be in on him at his cost.
So you're taking him, I guess really the other question, so are you taking him over all of those names there?
I would take him over Andrews. I would take him over Kincaid and not think twice because Kincaid kind of stinks. Njoku would depend on my team. If you have a competitive team, I would actually prefer Njoku. But if you were more leaning rebuild or whatever, then I think Kraft is fine. Kelsey, yes. Jonnu, yes. Everybody after that, yes.
Yeah.
The only ones, like once Kittle and Njoku are off the board, yeah, Kraft's my next name off the board.
Yeah, I think I would have probably had him as the next tight end right after Kittle as well. So I'm with you. Well, I think that's it, man. I think it was interesting conversations, lots of stuff to talk about. I'm actually kind of glad that there was quite a few things we did disagree on, because I feel like it does make good discourse, and it does allow people to kind of hear two sides of the coin. But also, there was definitely a few things that we still were in agreement on. I think you might be, this conversation today, maybe we'll talk a little bit more after too, but I think this conversation today, it might be making me push May above Herbert, or adjust my rankings right now. Just that conversation. But I think that's really it, man. If you guys are watching this for the first time, make sure you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, go join the Discord, like I said, because that's where we get people to draft with us. Corey, where can the people find you at? You guys are killing it over there at Stock Exchange, but where can the people find you at?
Yeah, if you're looking for more disagreements, that's what we specialize in. I'm so used to having arguments about players because that's pretty much all me and Danny do on our YouTube channel. But yeah, you can find us over youtube.com/the Fantasy Stock Exchange, or Fantasy Stock Exchange. There's no the in there. And then TikTok, Fantasy Stock Exchange, Instagram. We just got kicked off. We have like barely any followers over there, but give us a follow over there if you guys are Instagram people. And yeah, you can find me on X or Twitter, whatever the kids are calling it, at Football Stock. I'm usually tweeting nonsense, so actual serious stuff usually occurs on the YouTube channel. And then draft guides and prospect models and all that kind of stuff is over on flockfantasy.com, and promo code FSE gets you 7 days for free if you want to check it out.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good, man. I appreciate you joining me. It's been fun. Maybe we'll have to do this again here in the future and get something else as well, but appreciate you, man.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.